Less than a week after a bridge in Baltimore collapsed, the bridge we've referred to, the integrity of these mega structures is getting a closer look.
Well, Fox 12's investigative reporter Ezra Kaplan has been digging into some of the engineering at the center of the discussion. He's in the studio now with more.
Yeah, that's right. The Wall Street Journal found that fewer than 10 bridges in the U.S. have the clearance of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. And 3 of those are in the Pacific Northwest. The St. John's and the Tacoma Narrows are both suspension bridges. The Lewis and Clark is a cantilever bridge. What they all have in common is robust engineering, placing enormous tension on steel components. Each piece of the bridge works together to support the thousands of cars crossing daily. But that also means that when one piece of steel under tension fails, it can cause a complete collapse. This is known as being fracture critical, and each of these locations falls into that category. This doesn't mean the bridges are unsafe, but it does mean that they lack redundancy, and they require special inspections of critical parts of the bridge, sometimes yearly. The Key Bridge in Baltimore was also a fracture critical bridge, but the NTSB found that it was the damage to the piers that led to the collapse. When the container ship veered off course, there was very little stopping it from slamming right into the bridge's pier. Federal guidelines for protecting bridges from waterway collisions came in the wake of a 1980 incident involving the Tampa Bay Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which collapsed after a freighter struck one of its supports. The guidelines were released in 1991, but bridges built earlier than that weren't required to comply. There are 2 techniques to protect bridges from boats. The first are dolphins. These are barriers placed away from the base of a support, meant to deflect any wayward ships. Oftentimes, these are huge concrete posts. The other is known as fenders. These are attached directly to a pier and are meant to absorb any impact. The 3 vulnerable bridges in the Pacific Northwest don't have fenders or dolphins, and installing them could be costly. Last year, Delaware announced a plan to install a new ship collision protection system for one bridge at a cost of $93 million. And Portland is also very different than Baltimore in that the St. John's and Lewis and Clark bridges don't often see large commercial ships passing through. Coming up next hour, we're going to hear from ODOT as they explain the lengths that they are going to keep our bridges safe. Reporting in studio, Ezra Kaplan, Fox 12 Investigates.